to another edition of Connect MKE. I'm your host, Denise Calloway. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson has proposed a nearly $2 billion budget for 2024. The $1.9 billion budget avoids some of the deep cuts of previous budgets thanks to Act 12. That's legislation the state passed that gives Milwaukee the ability to raise money through a sales tax. But it comes with what some people see as strings that will influence the 2024 budget and budgets to come. We're glad to welcome Mayor Johnson to Connect MKE to give us the details on the budget and to tell us what it means to everyday Milwaukee residents. Hello, Mayor, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Denise. Thank you.
Let's start with the basics. What is Act 12 and how is it influencing this budget?
Sure. So Act 12 is a piece of legislation that was passed in the Wisconsin legislature and signed. Governor Tony Evers said a number of things. First and foremost, it accomplished some of my priorities, some of my goals, which were to increase the amount of revenues received by the city of Milwaukee. So for the first time in literally decades, because of Act 12, the city of Milwaukee will receive additional shared revenue. That's an essential pot of revenue that the city receives to make sure that we're able to fund critical city services. Also, Act 12 presents an opportunity for the city of Milwaukee to enact a local sales tax. And some of your viewers may be aware that Milwaukee is one of the largest cities in the entire United States of America that does not have a local sales tax option to support our services. Act 12 rectifies that. But considering the fact that the legislature is held by Republicans, there were some additional strings that accompanied the bill. So with the money that we received, there are some requirements to make sure that there's a maintenance effort in increasing police and fire sworn strength on the streets. These are things that I agree with, things that I wanted to do anyway, but it's a requirement in the bill. There are also some strings attached that limit our ability to expand the streetcar in the city of Milwaukee, which I've opposed. There are issues in the bill that limit our ability to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the city of Milwaukee, which I've also opposed, and some other things as well, too, that are present in the bill. But it saved us from falling off a fiscal cliff in the year 2025, where we would have had to lay off roughly half the police department in the city of Milwaukee, more than a quarter of our firefighters, shutter virtually all of our libraries, and lay off about 400 general city employees. We averted that disaster by getting Act 12 passed.
I've heard some people describe it as Act 12 allowing the city to live to fight another day with some of those issues and requirements in Act 12 that people may oppose. This gives the city the financial means to continue to move forward.
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. We were in a position where the city of Milwaukee is going to fall off of the fiscal cliff. That had been coming for some years, and it finally was at the door. There was really no room for us to push this off much farther. In fact, had the city not received the American Rescue Plan Act funds from President Joe Biden's administration, the city of Milwaukee already would have fallen off a fiscal cliff. So it was extremely important for us to get this done so that we'd be able to, again, as you mentioned, and as others have said, live to fight another day, fund critical services in the city of Milwaukee, keep police officers on the job and actually add more police to the streets, keep firefighters on the job and actually add more firefighters to firehouses, have more fire apparatuses operating in the city of Milwaukee, and keep our libraries open and those other city employees, about 400 or so, that perform critical functions throughout the city government, serving our residents all across Milwaukee.
Let's talk about some of those critical safety infrastructure pieces that are in this budget. So in this budget, you are looking at adding more police officers and also more firefighters.
Yes, that is correct. The budget that I produced, as you mentioned, nearly $2 billion, a $1.9 billion document, does add to police sworn strength. So for the first time in several years, we're not cutting police in Milwaukee. For the first time in years, we're not eliminating fire service in Milwaukee. We're actually adding to those services. And we're able to do that in large part because of the work that we did, the bipartisan work that we accomplished in Madison to get Act 12 passed. So we'll be adding police next year here. That's our plan. We're putting forward, my proposed budget put forward enough money to have 3 classes at the police academy, the maximum amount of classes the academy is able to accommodate in a year. And those classes are funded at the full strength of 65 recruits. 3 classes, 65 recruits for police officers. That's as much as we can possibly produce out of Milwaukee. I think it'll net us some added police sworn strength in the next year. I believe about 15 officers or so when you add up retirements and the like. So I feel really, really good about the work that we've done here with police and with fire, and so many other elements of service in Milwaukee as well, including some reorganization and other departments too.
Well, one of those reorganizations or maybe changes that's coming and was a part of the Act 12 requirement are changes to the city's pension system. What are some of those changes and what's the impact going to be?
Sure. So the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County are the only 2 local governments in the entire state of Wisconsin that have their own independent pension systems. Under Act 12, the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County, starting January 1, will shift our pensioners, our future employees, into the Wisconsin retirement system, the statewide system that every other municipality in the state is a part of. So we'll be shuttering our pension system that we have here in a soft close. So the current pensioners who are presently receiving services through our pension, and those employees who are hired between now and the end of the year will continue to be in this program. But then we'll do a soft close on that, not adding more, and sending our new employees to the Wisconsin retirement system.
How does that impact the city budget? One of the things that we were seeing, of course, is that as those pension costs were increasing, that was additional money that the city would have to put into the pension system. Now, that issue is not going to occur as we hire new employees, correct?
Yeah, so we'll have some stability, some greater stability going into the state's retirement system, as opposed to having our own pension system. And what you are talking about is absolutely correct. Part of the reason why we've had the challenges in the city of Milwaukee's budget is because of the rising pension costs. Now, several years ago, the city had to contribute no money, $0 into our pension because it performed very well. But because of things in the economy and the pension multipliers of especially folks in the police and fire fields, that has driven up our pension costs. So we went from zero several years ago to $20 million, $40 million, $60 million, $70 million, and those numbers are only scheduled to increase in the future here. So we'll be going over to the state's retirement system, seeking some greater stability there, and being in a position to be able to provide our future city employees, those employees who are hired by the city starting January 1, and then beyond that, to go into the state's retirement system.
What else is in the budget that you want Milwaukee residents to know about that's going to benefit them?
Sure. I'm glad you asked that question. So there are a number of things in the budget that I think people across Milwaukee will benefit. One is our attention to public safety, again, with the added numbers of police officers and firefighters on the job. In a number of neighborhoods across Milwaukee, there have been issues where buildings that are foreclosed upon or vacant have been left behind, that are fire damaged, that are otherwise not habitable. We'll be working to take those properties down at a faster clip than we have in the past. We've got a backlog of properties that need to be raised, and my budget proposal has a project that I call Raise and Revive, where we'll be going in and doubling the amount of these properties that we'll be tearing down. And it's Raise and Revive. So the city will do its part to raise those properties, and it'll create some vacant lots that we then can work with our partners to do the revival part. Our partners over at Via CDC, for instance, who I just joined recently, partnering with the Milwaukee-based company to build housing on vacant lots. Partners like Habitat for Humanity that continues to build houses in neighborhoods all across Milwaukee. Partners within the city government like our Department of City Development that's taking some of these homes that can be saved, investing federal ARPA dollars into those properties and selling them at affordable rates to owner occupants who will help to stabilize those neighborhoods. Another thing that I think is critically important for public safety in Milwaukee and upgrading our infrastructure in the city is a program that I'm calling Brightline, where we will be taking the high pressure sodium fixtures off of lights in the city and instead installing LED lights, brighter LED lights that'll upgrade those lights, make them brighter, and therefore improve public safety in neighborhoods across Milwaukee. Because I think all of us know that the bad guys out there, criminals, they don't like lights, they don't like cameras, they don't like eyes, and this will help to illuminate neighborhoods, especially in hours of darkness when criminals think that it's best for them to strike. So we'll be taking that on in this budget as well. As I mentioned, we're keeping libraries open. We're not producing a budget that will cut library services and library hours. So that's a benefit to residents across Milwaukee as well. We're also investing the most money ever into our local streets. So folks in neighborhoods across Milwaukee should prepare to see more streets being redone in 2024, including our very popular high-impact paving program. And lastly, there's so much more, but lastly, I'll tell you here that it's my desire to build out a protective bike lane network throughout the city of Milwaukee to make sure that there's equity for folks to be able to get around the city and do so without a car and to do so safely. So that is good for bicyclists, it's good for stroller pushers, it's good for scooter riders and the like. It also presents an opportunity for us to make our streets safer for all the users of the roadway, especially people who are traversing the city by bicycle. So we'll be building that protected bicycle network out, reducing our carbon footprint and making Milwaukee a safer place for all.
One of the things you have talked about is your goal to have Milwaukee be a city with 1 million residents. Is this budget really the backbone, the underlayment to begin to reach that goal?
Look, everything that we do here is, I think, laying a foundation and building on a foundation to get us to that goal, that very aspirational, ambitious goal to grow our city. When we talk about making our neighborhoods safer, increasing public safety, that's a thing that's attractive to people who want to stay here and people who would consider moving to Milwaukee. And people who move to Milwaukee, people who want to stay in Milwaukee, want access to good-paying, family-supporting jobs. When we make these investments in public safety and in infrastructure, it's attractive to businesses that want to come here, that want to attract new talent here, that want to retain talent here. When we talk about building a protected bike lane network and increasing equity throughout the city, that's an attractive thing for people of means who could go anywhere and take a job in any company in any city. We want them to do that here in Milwaukee, and we want our talent that presently is here to stay here. So yes, this budget is building towards that goal of growing our city.
One of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier when you talked about how Act 12 happened, how the increase in shared revenue happened, you talked about the bipartisan work that was done. Is this something we should be hopeful about in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, that is Act 12 a sign that there can be bipartisan work that happens in our state?
Well, look, when I was elected mayor, I said I have a pot in the Capitol, and a pot in the Capitol to make sure that we didn't fall off this fiscal cliff. The only way that that effort was going to work is if we worked in a bipartisan manner. Look, we've got split government in the state of Wisconsin. We've got a Republican-held legislature, and we've got a Democratic governor. So we have to work in a bipartisan way in order to get things done, in order to have actual progress for Wisconsin and for the city of Milwaukee. So it's my goal to not sit on the sidelines, to sit on my hands and point fingers and complain. It's my job as mayor to work to get things done. And that's exactly what we're doing in this administration. So as long as Republicans have control of the legislature, I'm going to work with them. I'm going to hold them accountable, but I'm going to work with them in order to get wins for Milwaukee, just like we did with Act 12, stopping the city from falling off a decades-long coming fiscal cliff, and continuing to provide excellent customer service to all of our constituents across the city.
What do you think you can work with the legislature on next?
I have stated my desire to work with the legislature on issues around gun violence. I think that's critically important and something that, I take very, very seriously. I get, phone calls and text messages constantly from the Milwaukee Police Department and others when something happens in our community where somebody's been shot or somebody's been killed, especially by a firearm. I'm outraged when I see on the news or read the newspaper that these things have happened, especially when it affects kids. And I imagine that Republican legislators are also alarmed by that amount of violence. And so I think there's some space, even on the margins. I understand it's not going to be sweeping legislation, but if we can get something even on the margins to move this forward, I think that's a positive thing. It's a positive outcome for Milwaukee. It's a positive outcome for the state of Wisconsin. So I'd like to work with them on that. I think presently right now, what is on the front burner in the legislature right now to get done, since we just a couple of months ago wrapped up Act 12 and increasing revenues to the city of Milwaukee for the first time in decades, is this whole issue around the Milwaukee Brewers. So it's my desire to continue to work with the legislature and find some wins for the city of Milwaukee in this as well.
One quick question related to that. In other cities where we've seen expansion or improvements at ballparks, we've seen either the creation of or expansion of commercial areas around that area, often in partnership with the ball club. Would you like to see the Brewers do that at American Field?
I would love to see the Brewers have development at American Family Field, and something I've been very, very vocal on in the past number of weeks here. I mean, look, you don't have to go terribly far in the state of Wisconsin to see that this works. I mean, if you look at what happens outside of Camp Randall, there's development around the football stadium. If you look at what the Green Bay Packers have done in recent years around the Titletown district, if you look at what's happened right here in Milwaukee, just miles away from American Family Field, and what the Milwaukee Bucks have done with the growing Deer District, there are examples right here in the state, and there are examples all across the United States of this working. And so, again, as you pointed out, like, I'm a mayor that wants to see more growth. I'm a mayor that wants to see more development. We got ambitious goals in Milwaukee. I think that American Family Field and the sea of parking around the baseball stadium can play a vital role in doing that. We've got a lot of success in building new neighborhoods in Milwaukee. When you look at what's happened in the former Pabst Brewery complex, that's a win. That's a new neighborhood. When you look at what's happening presently over at the Deer District and the build out there, that's a win. That's a new neighborhood that we're building in the city. I think we have the possibility, the capability to do the same thing at American Family Field. So it may not happen in this particular bill, but I think it needs to be on the front burner for the Milwaukee Brewers in the years ahead to actually build development at the ballpark. It's important.
Mayor, you've got a lot on your plate, so thank you for making time to talk with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
The City of Milwaukee budget will be adopted in early November, so make sure you let your alderperson know what's important to you. Coming up, a favorite Milwaukee event is back with a whole new look. Stay with us.